Hey everybody, this is Cody from the Strand Theatre. We're going to try something a little bit different here today. I'm doing some different little jobs around the theater that are some of the things that are required to keep a theater like ours running. And I thought with all the people online that are doing different kinds of vlogs kind of things, we might give that a try and see and have you guys follow along with some of the jobs I am doing today. So just follow along and I'll cut back in here as I do different things, showing you what I'm going to be doing. Right now, if you see right in front of me is our amp rack backstage in a room we call Circuit City. These are the amps that power all the main speakers that you see out front, and then what are called the monitor speakers, which are the speakers on stage that are used by the performer so that they can hear themselves on stage. Because generally speaking, they are not able to hear the speakers that are pointed towards the audience. And then down at the bottom also is our sub amp. And then also at the very bottom, I guess technically at the very bottom of the used equipment, I should say, is a DMX splitter, which are all these 6 connections you see here. And those take the one signal from our light board and send it to different various places on the stage. And then just down on the bottom is a retired amp. That's retired, but it's something that's kind of cool enough to at least hang around the bottom of the rack for right now. So what I'm going to be doing is going through and cleaning a lot of these connections. Coming out of COVID, we've had a lot of issues with not great signal, and this can happen especially when equipment sits for a long time, that the different potentiometers or volume controls and just different jacks and connectors can start to corrode, and as that corrosion comes on, it interrupts us from getting a clean signal. So I'm going to be going through and trying to clean up some of this corrosion. For that, I got a couple different things. Any of you in the audio world, you might probably have heard deoxit. I've got some. This here, I guess, is just the lubrication. And then I've got also some cleaner. So we'll go through, spray some of this on those, exercise them a little bit, move them back and forth, get some of that corrosion scraped off, and hopefully we'll get rid of some of those issues we've been having with signal. Okay, now so we got all the volume controls on these amps in the front cleaned. I cleaned just what we call the 1/4-inch jacks up here for right now. Main point being the XLR ones up here are constantly changed. In fact, in the few shows that I've had so far this year, I've changed them around probably 3 or 4 different times, so they get exercised a little bit more often. So they're a lot less likely to get dirty. These ones down here are the signal that comes from the board to the amps, so they probably don't get changed around very much. It's definitely the first time that I've done it. We've had other volunteers that take care of the sound stuff before, so it's not like it's never been done, but it's Definitely been since before COVID, since we didn't touched any of those. Figured to show you around the back here too. This is where all the connections come in, and then these speak-on connections come out, and those go to our speakers. Also back here now we have our little network switch. Doesn't have anything in it quite yet, but we've got several ideas for things we want to put on there. Over here on this board is where we have our signal or internal camera. Got some storage bins I just recently put in because I got tired of losing all my small parts. Little power strip. Interesting thing about this rack, to some degree I guess, at least interesting to me, these two power strips on the top of the rack plugging back here, whereas all the other power in this room comes in and plugs in right there. Now, the difference between those two outlets, these back here are actually controlled by a relay that's down in the dressing room, that when we turn off our board back in the sound booth, it turns off those outlets and then turns off our amps. That way we don't have our amps running 24/7, and we also don't have to come back here and turn those amps off manually every time. So down here we have our dressing room. That's still very much in progress, but every time we come down, every time we work here, it seems like we got a little bit farther. Right now I got concrete on the floor. That'll eventually get the carpet squares. Our ceiling's most of the way in. Main reason why it's still open is we're waiting on me, unfortunately, to get some wire ran to put some speakers in. Not sure I'll get to any of that today or not, but we'll have to wait and see. Here's where all our power comes in. Here's the stairs that lead up to stage right. Coat racks are new as of a couple weeks ago. Got another staircase that leads up to stage left, more or less. It's technically the hallway to the side of stage left, but stage left nonetheless. Little dressing room in a dressing room, I guess. Or at least a little area where you can close off. Main thing I'm going to do down here right now. So you've got our feed so we can see what's going on stage. But I got just a little clock that I'm going to throw in real quick so we can see what time it is down here, because right now there's no clock. Just like that, another one of the little projects on my wish list done. Nice thing about that clock, it's AC powered, but it's also automatically updating, so hopefully we won't have to mess with it too much. It's kind of why I specifically still chose that particular one. Other kind of side note here that's I find kind of amusing. If you look down here, see a drill and a case that's a socket set. That's actually my drill and socket set, and 9 times out of 10 when I can't find a tool at my house, I know it's probably at the Strand. Okay, I'm back here backstage still, getting ready to work on the next thing on my list, which is, if you look here, up all the way around the proscenium, on this side we got 3 LED cans, this side we got 3 LED cans, which are the chrome looking lights right here. These are kind of generic, but they're just RGB LEDs that we can color mix from our light board. Additionally, now we have little bar lights down here. They'll shine up on the proscenium. Those are relatively new. They need to get hooked up. They have power, which I did in another one of our work sessions. Now that we just need to get the signal to them working. I tried to get it running, but ran out of time before one of our shows. But basically I'm just trying to tap into the line that feeds these lights over here. If you remember when I was up in Circuit City, I talked about our DMX splitter. One of those lines comes off, kind of goes up and around and into the back of these cans. And basically on these lights, they can just daisy chain up to an extent. I think the theoretical limit is probably around 32 devices, In practice, I try and keep it under 16, but sometimes it's just you got to do what you got to do, and because basically once you get the more and more devices you put on these, you run into an issue called data reflection, and basically what that is this DMX signal is slightly different protocols, but very similar to the old style serial connections you would see on PCs. Some of you might be familiar with those, a lot of you probably not, but basically it just means that it's sending a single streams of ones and zeros down that line. Now due to the properties of how these cablings work and everything, wherever there's just a junction, or in particular at the end of the data chain, which would be over here on this bar light, kind of down in here where it's a little bit buried right now. But at the end of those, each data line, you're supposed to put what's called a terminator. Terminator, at least in this case, is just a resistor. In this case, 75 ohms for DMX. And basically that just keeps data from reflecting back, because when it reaches an endpoint like that, some residual current can start leaking back through, and when you get the same ones and zeros basically bouncing back and forth along the line, you get a lot of data corruption. And I think we're running into either a bad connection somewhere on this line here, because these LED cans never really did work that great. The ones over here especially would start acting randomly, and usually that means data corruption somewhere. So what I'm going to attempt to do is to probably have the data line from our splitter go down to this bar light down here first, which I'll plunge it down here so you can see. But basically it's going to go down into the bottom of that fixture. See, we've got our dedicated power for this light fixture here. And it's going to come back up, start feeding these LED cans, go all the way over to these, start feeding these LED cans, and then finally come all the way back down here and feed this bar light down here. Now, a few different ways you could do this. I think just to be safe, I'm kind of going to go and just basically rip out all the data cables, test it, and then put them back in one by one, test them as I go, and then hopefully that will result in everything working okay. If not, you can start bypassing these can lights, because technically these two connections on the back of these lights can just be plugged right into each other. Oh look, there you go. There's some data corruption. That's what I'm talking about. And sometimes that will just randomly start like that. So usually, unfortunately for now, what our solution has always been, see, we got our little switch here, off, on, and that takes care of it for now. So that's what I'm going to be working on right now. Okay, so here's how we test our cables. Just have this simple little multi-cable tester. Basically, you can test XLR, 1/4 inch, RCA, TT MIDI. I think it, oh, yep, 1/8 inch. So basically how this works, I just got a short one right here. XLR cable, plug one end to one jack, can get it lined up, I'm not a professional camera person, so I apologize if it's moving around too much. And plug the other end in like that. So we're just looping our cable in and out of this device. We turn it on and push this reset to get rid of those intermittents. But on a good cable, we should see a diagonal line right there, which tells us pin 1's connected to pin 1, pin 2 to 2, and 3 to 3. The only thing else I'd normally do, give it a good shake, because if there's even just an intermittent connection, one of these intermittent lights will come on. So this looks to be a good cable. So on this cable, I already tested once before, but you can see it's only got the one light. That means pin 1's connected to pin 1, but there's an issue with the connection on pin 2 and pin 3 on this one. So an advantage of doing it this way, where I'm just pulling all the cables and just kind of rethinking this whole thing through, I actually came up with something, because splitter's over here. I gotta go up with the first cable all the way up and then over and then back down, and then my plan was to go to the bar light at the bottom first, which means going all the way back down again to here. Fortunately, that can't be done with one cable, so I had to use two. It occurred to me that since I'm not going to these LED lights up here first anymore, there's no reason to go up and over. Another common way out of Circuit City, if we go over this way, hopefully there's enough light. You can see there's a little exit here. This is actually where a lot of our cables come out of Circuit City. And they go down here, go along the stairwell, and then right here is where our bar light is. So if I ran a cable from here, came along to our already common cable trunk, came up here into the splitter, I'm betting I could do that with one cable, and that would make it a lot easier run and a lot one less connection, which is always good with DMX. One less cable, one less thing to go wrong. So let's give that a try. Big concern now, though, is that these two lights on the side should be the same color, and they're not. So I gotta figure out what's going on with that. That could be part of that poor signal. So first thing, I might just try going ahead and taking these LEDs out of the mix, and maybe at some point in time we'll either replace them with something else, either different LED cans, or I'm still interested in the idea of trying to get some more LED strip in here, and not necessarily strip in terms of like these. I usually consider these more like bar lights,
When I'm talking about strip, I'm talking about the self-adhesive LED strips you see all over the place anymore. And I'm wondering, maybe tuck some back behind this edge here and go all the way around the proscenium. Could be cool. Not sure how it would necessarily look on the sides of this. We could potentially hide it back down in here or something. Especially when you consider looking up close, you might be able to see it, but if you go out here in the house, even from the first row, a lot of stuff you can't see. So we'll have to wait and see what I decide to do with that. But back to this light being the wrong color. How these lights work is they use something called DMX. DMX kind of started in the days of just these regular lights up here, and it was a very simple system. One channel of DMX equaled the dimmer for one light, or possibly, like in this case here, we've got the pair of lights, so like the key and fill from each side on the same DMX channel. Or I take that back, actually, they are different DMX channels, they're just tied to the same fader on our board. But nonetheless, one channel was one dimmer, essentially. However, now we get to these LED lights, and we got a lot more properties than just how bright it is that we need to control. We have the RGB, even technically on, I'm not sure, yeah, you can kind of see them up there. There's bigger LEDs up there. Those are actual RGBA, meaning that they have an additional amber channel. And it just kind of gives that more of a warm feel to the light, be able to get some more of those ambers. Since in RGB, red is pretty much your only hot color, when green and blue are both cool colors. And if you throw in some amber with that, lets you get a lot more brighter and more defined, warmer colors. So that means on these tiny LEDs, we've got at least 3 things we need to control: how bright the red is, how bright the green is, and how bright the blue is. And by controlling those 3 parameters, you can get just about any color in the rainbow. With lights like this, it's harder to get an exact color match, but it's something where you can at least get some color mixing. And on the big ones, we need at least 4. So these lights actually come with 2 modes. We're using it in this more simplified mode, or where the small LEDs you actually use 3 DMX channels. The bigger LEDs use 4 DMX channels, one for each of the colors that it needs to mix: red, green, or blue, and in the case of the big ones, also amber. Now each of these channels can have values from between 0 and 255, and basically 0 just means that it's off, 255 means that it's completely on, and that's how DMX works. So by controlling how much of each color there is and how bright each color is, dictates what color will actually be shown. So back to my color issue over here. These LED bars, I've only messed with the programming on them once, so I can't remember exactly, but I think they are 3-channel. The only other thing they might be is 4-channel, because depending on the manufacturer, sometimes they'll give you a overall dimmer in addition to your red, green, and blue. So you have your individual dimmer for red, green, and blue, and then a separate one for white, or for not white, but just as a master. So the reason this one could be the wrong color is I might have the DMX channel set wrong, because if you think of them in order, if I have it offset by 1, instead of putting those values into the red channel like I think I should be doing, I could be putting it into the green and blue, which makes me think like this might be a 4-channel, because I might be trying to send 255 to the master and red, and instead it's offset by 2, and I'm getting sent to the green and blue, although that still wouldn't explain the master. No, troubleshooting DMX is always fun. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and walk back here to the board first. And this is just the first of these kind of more technical vloggy style things, so always let me know in the comments what kind of content you would like to see. I'm kind of throwing a little bit of everything at you, a little bit of just static capture shots, a little bit of explaining some of the more technical details, a little bit more just simply doing boring maintenance stuff. So if there's something in particular you'd like to see more of or less of, always feel free to let us know down in the comments or what have you. So this is our light board. Basically, the park hands or the silver lights around the edge are under what we call the proscenium, and then park hands. So this slider here. And then this button, we can control what color we want it to be over here on our touchscreen. And I have another one here labeled proscenium LED bars. And that's this slider here. And as you see, it should be set to red. And while all these light fixtures may be different DMX channels, these sliders back here can be programmed so that one slider can control multiple different devices, even if they are on different DMX channels. And that's just simply because these are all the sliders we have. And until we get a little bit better with our light board and figuring out how to do some submasters and cues and that kind of thing, each kind of more area or thing that we want to control is its own slider. So we got pretty much across the top all traditional fixtures, save for this one here that says side wash. That's an LED that just didn't fit in the bottom row. And pretty much everything on the bottom row is some kind of smart fixture. So what I'm going to double check real quick is on our light board. I can go to setup, patch, and this is just going to be there we go. I knew it could make that smaller somehow. Saying for CH over here, which on this light board means the slider, what kind of device it is. Dimmer just means it's a traditional dimmer on one of a traditional light. What universe it is, which a universe just means a different DMX connection. On this board we have two of them. One goes upstairs, which is universe 2, and that's where a lot of the balcony lights are, these first ones here. Then our first universe is sent backstage to that DMX splitter in Circuit City that we saw earlier. So let's scroll through here. These LED bars are slider 34. So if we scroll down to 34, you see we got our custom RGB LED bars and then the DMX channels that they use. And it looks like on these fixtures they are 7 channel. Oh, here we go. And actually here is a little book that came with those lights. So basically this tells us what each of those channels do. And so this one's got the first 3 channels are really the only ones we care about, the red, green, and blue dimmers. And these other ones here are more effects that are built into the fixtures themselves. Our LED lights that I mentioned earlier that had 2 modes, that's what their second mode introduces, as well as some more of these. It's very different per manufacturer, so it's something that can be a pain to deal with when you have an actual smart light board like this. These modes would probably be much more common in like a DJ setup or something where they have a smaller board, or they have a situation where someone's not actually running the lights. It's something where they need them to respond to sound, or they need them to do some kind of effect and basically be something that they can set and forget. And a lot of these modes, that's what it allows for that to do. So, back to looking at the screen. For each of these lights, you can see they have a range of DMX channels. That means for that first LED bar, it uses DMX channels 105 to 112. So that means on this particular light, referencing our little manual here, our DMX channel 105 would control the red, DMX channel 106 control the blue or green, and DMX channel 107 would control the blue. So ideally, what that means for these two LED bars is that right now the board should be sending out 255 on DMX channels 105 and 113, and then 0 on 106, 107, and 114 and 115, which are the green and blue. Because for red, we don't need any green and we don't need any blue. So, let's see here. I think if I pull this back up here, I don't do this a ton, but let's see if I can show it for you guys. And here we are. So I guess this, that red preset on our board technically only sends 254, but when you're talking about DMX, a single value like that's not really going to create any noticeable difference. So that's essentially red full on. So as far as we can tell back here, yeah, this might be set correctly. So why are we still seeing an issue? Well, back on each of these lights, since they can have multiple different channels and they take the DMX signal directly into them, they need to know what channels to listen to. So next we're going to go up on stage, check that light fixture, make sure it's programmed with the correct light channel.
Went and looked at the bottom of that fixture, I just tried bypassing these lights over here because they kept acting up. And well, you know, I got solid red. It's weird that a data issue would be so solidly, because normally it would be constantly changing if it's a signal error. But it looked like that over there might have just been a signal error. So we got both those lights working now. So now comes one of the decisions I have to make around here sometimes. Is something that was used and acquired or donated for some reason or another worth the trouble to get working, or at least working consistently? When it comes to those LEDs around the proscenium, it's one of those things that they were heavily used when we got them. They're fairly generic, straight from China kind of thing. So while they were some of our first LED lights that we were able to acquire, it's something that their dependability has started to become an issue. So it's something that sometimes I can wiggle a cable in the back of them and they start working, but ultimately in a production venue like this, especially one where someone like me is not always able to be here for every event and do some of this troubleshooting, it's not always worth it to just constantly band-aid equipment. And as much as I hate to do it, I might essentially retire those and kind of turn it into something where maybe we just unplug them, leave them in place, and then we can make it something that maybe for big shows or certain shows where we want to try and use them again, we'll hook them back up, try and get them working. If they don't, they don't. But make it something that we won't use on just a random lecture or other kind of show. And we might look into trying to invest in or acquiring in some way something a little bit higher quality. With these LEDs out here, I was showing before, they may not necessarily be a professional brand, but they are at least a name brand, and one that if you walk into like a Guitar Center or something like that, you would see lights of this brand. Now, sure, do they come from the same kind of place? Yeah, probably. Is the quality a little bit better? Yeah, hopefully. But with these also, we actually acquired those new, and their entire life they have lived up here. So it's down to an issue of, yeah, their connections can possibly get corroded over time. However, they're not going to get beat up very much because they're out of the way
nobody's going to touch them up there. So hopefully those, for that reason, will last a little bit longer, in addition to the other reasons that I mentioned, and we'll get a lot more useful life out of those. Not that these are bad LEDs up here either. There's just a different degree of quality, just like with anything else out there. So, just finished getting those LEDs on stage right side bypassed. Not exactly my preferred way to do things, but time can be limited sometimes around here. And I figure I'd sit down and talk a little bit. This is the kind of first vlog that I did, or not for at least first one that we're doing in this format, let's say that. And normally you see David talking to you all the time, and that's great, he's good at that. I'm not the best at that, so this is something that's definitely out of my comfort zone, and hopefully it'll actually make it online. We'll have to see, because this one I'm going to have to actually go in and edit, so we'll see what happens with that. But right now I'm sitting up here in the upper balcony, so I figure I'd just do a little bit of talking a little bit about what this vlog kind of style could be and what you guys might want it to be. As I said today, kind of threw around a bunch of different ideas, a little bit of examples of a few different ideas of what I thought it could be, explaining technical concepts, going deep into that DMX thing, explaining how all that works. I'm sure there's probably at least some of you out there that's interested in that kind of thing. And just doing kind of progress shots and doing some just little jobs around the theater that kind of make this place work. And something to remember, that I'm not even the only one doing these kinds of things. The entire time I've been here, there's been another volunteer, Bob Slook, just working away, doing his thing, doing what he's good at. And it's something to remember that there might be some professionals or other people out there that are saying, oh, why did you do something that way, or why are you doing this? And I want to kind of explain some of the reasoning behind why we do some of the things that we do the way we do them, maybe. Ultimately, it all comes back to fulfilling our goal of performing live theater and other kinds of artsy and just fun events here at the Strand. That's what we're all about here in the end. However, it is something that at the same time, you've got to remember, everybody here at the Strand, me, David, anybody else, we're all volunteers. We never have been paid. Strand's nonprofit, and even under those circumstances, we barely make ends meet sometimes. So we're all here because we enjoy it, and that's what the Strand is all about. And so part of the reason why we do certain things that we do is because those are the things that interest us. And it's like with this DMX lighting, that's an interest of mine. I'm a network engineer by trade, so I have a day job. I do computer networks in my day job. Not exactly the same thing, but it's that same kind of technical vein, dealing with infrastructure and connecting different devices together. So that's just something that interests me. A lot of the tech stuff around here interests me. Me being a network engineer is why our network has as many switches as it does, and has them all connected by fiber, because that's what I do in my day job. So if you ever think, well, maybe that's a little excessive for a small town theater to have. Well, yeah, maybe it is a little excessive, but sometimes there's more reason behind that kind of thing than just what the Strand needs. Sometimes it's about getting our volunteers engaged, and this is very much a fun thing for me more than anything else. And sometimes when you try to have places that people come and it's just their job and they're just getting that paycheck, they're not really passionate about it. But when you have a place like the Strand where you have as many volunteers as we do, and all volunteers, and that just put their heart and soul into the theater, that's what kind of makes this thing work and makes it so much fun. So just kind of wanted to mention that. Probably won't get a ton of these kind of just sitting down talks as part of this vlog, but that's just one of those things that I like to try and get out there at least once or twice. Yeah. Again, let us know how you like these kind of semi-deep dives into a lot more informal videos of things we do around here. We'll see if this ends up on Facebook. I am kind of trying to work on getting a YouTube channel for the Strand started. We had one, back maybe 2012. I was able to resurrect that channel and upload some of our recent lectures on there. So if you have friends and family that just don't do the Facebook thing, and maybe they'll at least do the whole YouTube thing, maybe they can start catching some of our videos there. But it's definitely something I don't know if I want to intrude on everybody's Facebook feed with something like this or not. We'll have to wait and find out. Probably ask around and see what everybody else thinks. But it might at least end up on YouTube, and then maybe we can at least link to the YouTube video on our Facebook. So that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a contact through any of our social media, through email. Maybe I'll even throw some stuff up on the screen here in post, let you know how you can contact us. If you're interested in volunteering, please feel free to reach out. If you're interested in seeing some parts of the theater maybe and having some more deep dive, I'm not the most knowledgeable when it comes to some of maybe the historical stuff, but when it comes to like the technology stuff, a lot of the cool new stuff coming in, that's kind of where I specialize. So if you have any questions, feel free to give us a ring and do the whole stereotypical like, subscribe, all that good stuff that you see everybody online asking you to do. Share it to your friends. But thanks for joining us. See you later.